I'm down with Crestor.
We see drug ads on TV every day.
The U.S. and New Zealand are the only two developed countries that allow this.
Let's go tonight.
But when it comes to our health, are flashy drug commercials masking the risks?
Iran struck a deal to stop developing nuclear weapons. But is Tehran keeping that promise? President Trump differs with his own intelligence chiefs.
That doesn't mean I have to agree.
The answer may be in this trove of Iranian documents captured in a nighttime raid by Israel.
We're going to show you Iran's secret nuclear files. And here's what we got.
By the way, are we having a good time?
Ranking U.S. leadership on the world stage.
What are the trends?
The trends are not very good for the United States.
The revealing results of a global survey. Who's popular, who's not, and why we should care.
According to your polling, which countries like us the most? Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Full Measure has learned the FDA is planning a new study on TV advertising of prescription drugs. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry benefiting both pharmaceutical companies and the television networks paid to run the ads. Supporters say patients benefit too. But almost nowhere in the world is this allowed except here. And with prescription drug use a leading cause of death and injury, we investigate the pill pitch.
Dr. Michael Carone leads the health research group at the watchdog Public Citizen. He's against prescription drug advertising on TV. It was forbidden until a fierce lobbying campaign by the pharmaceutical industry in the 1990s.
But in 1997, the FDA opened the floodgates to broadcast media, television and radio ads for prescription drugs, and we now have companies spending billions of dollars every year on this advertising.
Let's go tonight. I'm down with Crestor.
Sleep. Remember when it welcomed you like a friend?
The average person in the U.S. sees 9 drug ads a day, or 30 hours of drug ads per year, which is just an extraordinary amount of exposure to prescription drug advertising.
Ask your doctor about Prilosec, the most prescribed acid control medicine in America.
The ads upset the long-standing rule that doctors alone should decide the best pills for patients.
Lipitor is FDA approved to reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke in patients.
To get an idea of how much the ads boost profits, you need only look at how much is spent on them. In 2018, the pharmaceutical industry shelled out $6.4 billion on so-called direct-to-consumer ads. No one from the drug industry would agree to an interview. Representatives have said in the past that pharmaceutical advertising saves lives.
Depression hurts
and improves public health.
Cymbalta can help.
Dr. Carone says there are serious downsides.
They're the newest drugs, so we often know the least about their safety because they haven't been on the market for a while. And often there are older alternatives that may be equally effective and safer. And because those drugs aren't advertised, because the generic drug industry doesn't do this type of advertising, it can worsen public health overall.
Experts say taking prescription drugs as prescribed is a leading cause of death in the U.S., a factor in as many as 200,000 deaths a year.
Tell your doctor right away if your depression worsens, you have unusual changes in behavior, or thoughts of suicide.
Safety is a big reason why the FDA requires the ads to clearly disclose risks.
Your blood pressure could drop to an unsafe level.
Serious side effects,
Such as body rash or trouble breathing.
severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting.
Loss of appetite.
An increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor if you have high fever.
And they're going to make sure that the viewers leave the commercial with an understanding of the benefits of perhaps some miracle cure and not hopefully remember too much about the potential harms and risks.
One infamous case involves clever marketing of Bayer's birth control pill, Yaz.
The pill more and more women are turning to.
The FDA has hit Yaz ads with multiple complaints for minimizing risks and overstating benefits.
Yaz contains DRSP, a different kind of hormone.
Bayer ran a $20 million corrective ad campaign.
So you shouldn't take Yaz if you have kidney, liver, or adrenal disease because this could cause serious heart and health problems.
Even after that, the FDA flagged Yaz ads again for failing to disclose any risks, including heart attack, stroke, gallbladder disease, blood clots, and death. Then there's the cholesterol drug Lipitor.
Dr. Robert Jarvik, inventor of the artificial heart.
At one time, Lipitor was the best-selling drug in the world, generating $12 billion a year for Pfizer. Dr. Robert Jarvik, who invented an artificial heart, got a $1.3 million contract to pitch Lipitor.
And I just feel really good about lending my support.
But the FDA called his ad misleading because Jarvik isn't a cardiologist and never treated patients or prescribed drugs. By the way, that's not him rowing the boat, it's a stunt double. Pfizer eventually pulled the ads. Another problem, says Dr. Carome, is when risks are told in a way people won't likely remember.
There are certainly advertisements where they're reading the risk information, but what's being portrayed is smiling people, interesting cartoon characters, and those are classic examples of distracting information.
Diabetes can be a daily struggle, even if you're trying your best.
A case in point, ads for the diabetes medicine Toujeo.
Toujeo is used to control high blood sugar in adults with diabetes.
The FDA warned Toujeo's maker Sanofi about showing distracting, upbeat images while Toujeo's risks are presented.
Taking TZDs with insulins like Toujeo may cause heart failure that can lead to death. Get medical help right away if you have a serious allergic reaction, such as body rash or trouble breathing.
The FDA also dinged ads for Pfizer's menopause drug Estring for failing to present any risk information, including uterine cancer.
I can't believe I'm going to a studio today to talk about Estring. I really, truly hope that this can help other women.
Sometimes they may find an ad that violates the regulations, and they'll write a warning letter to the company, and the company will pull the ad. But at that point, the ad may have been out for many weeks or months, and already patients may have already been misled by it.
The FDA wouldn't agree to an interview, but after we began investigating the story, the agency told us it's launching a new study into prescription drug TV commercials, and particularly a category called disease awareness ads. We don't know which disease awareness ads are part of the FDA study, but this is an example from GlaxoSmithKline for adult whooping cough vaccine.
What might seem like a small cough to you can be a big, bad problem that you could spread to family members, including your grandchildren.
As long as they don't mention a brand, these ads are considered educational and don't have to mention any risks. Critics say it's a legal loophole that drug companies use to promote their products in a one-sided fashion. In this ad, viewers won't hear that whooping cough vaccine is linked to paralysis and possible heart problems, and 4% of patients report serious adverse events within 6 months.
Talk to your doctor or pharmacist about you and your family getting a whooping cough vaccination today.
Merck's disease awareness ads for HPV cervical cancer vaccine prey on parental guilt.
Maybe they didn't know I would end up with cancer because of HPV.
No mention of the vaccine's risk of blood clots, seizure, appendicitis, and paralysis.
Maybe my parents just didn't know.
All right, Mom? Dad?
The FDA tells Full Measure that it's focusing on disease awareness communications to find out if they may result in consumers misinterpreting and being confused by the information and claims. Michael Sinkinson has researched drug advertising and is an assistant economics professor at Yale.
Just to be clear, the US and New Zealand are the only two developed countries that allow this, right? So most countries have weighed the costs and benefits and said, no, we don't want to allow pharma companies to advertise on TV to patients.
Sinkinson doesn't speak for the drug industry and is skeptical of some of their claims, but he says pharmaceutical ads can benefit Americans' health by selling more product.
If the government comes along and says, actually, you can't advertise on TV, well, you need to revise those forecasts. You're not going to sell as many year after approval. And maybe the math no longer makes sense and you don't develop the drugs. I think it's more likely that advertising is a net positive for society, for novel drugs, for new treatments, and for drugs that are just very cost effective, very effective at keeping you out of the hospital and out of kind of other parts of the healthcare system that are very costly.
With the FDA taking a new look at all of this, Dr. Carome says drug risks should be clearer in audio and matching bold words on the screen with no distractions.
If you could wave a magic wand, what would the FDA do about the challenges that you've described?
So if I could wave a magic wand, we would no longer allow this type of direct-to-consumer advertising at all.
Are TV drug ads in the U.S. ever going to go away, do you think?
Unfortunately, not probably in our lifetime.
The FDA has proposed allowing drug companies to reduce the amount of risk information in ads. Ahead on Full Measure, who's right when it comes to Iran's nuclear activities? President Trump or his top intel officials? A surprising report. Iran remains the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Earlier this year, President Trump designated Iran's elite armed force, the Revolutionary Guard, a foreign terrorist organization. Meantime, the president has drawn criticism at home for suggesting Iran is continuing to explore nuclear weapons development. James Rosen has some surprising evidence that may support those suspicions.
In 2015, the Obama administration and 5 other world powers struck the controversial nuclear deal with Iran. The agreement restricted Iran's sensitive nuclear activities.
Because of this deal, inspectors will also be able to access any suspicious location.
As part of the deal, the Obama administration returned tens of billions of dollars in frozen funds to Iran, a move criticized in many quarters since Iran remains the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. Last year, the Trump administration withdrew the U.S. from the agreement. In January, CIA Director Gina Haspel told Congress Iran is nonetheless still living up to its part of the bargain.
Since our departure from the deal, they have abided by the terms.
So at the moment, technically, they're in compliance.
But before dawn, the morning after Haspel testified, President Trump tweeted the opposite. The intelligence people seem to be extremely passive and naive when it comes to the dangers of Iran. They are wrong. And in a TV interview, the president singled out the CIA director's assessment.
I should say your intel chiefs do say Iran's abiding by that nuclear deal. I know you think it's a bad deal.
I disagree with them. By the way,
you disagree with that assessment.
I have intel people. That doesn't mean I have to agree.
But newly uncovered evidence may support the president's suspicions that Iran is violating the nuclear deal.
We're going to show you Iran's secret nuclear files.
14 months ago, Israeli intelligence staged an overnight raid on an unmarked warehouse in Iran's capital. There, explained Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Iran kept an enormous and secret archive of documents about its past nuclear work.
And here's what we got.
Agents from Israel's intel agency, known as the Mossad, made off with half a ton of materials.
Here's a photo showing the casting process.
Perhaps the biggest revelation was a large number of documents, photos, and blueprints showing that Iran built a secret underground complex. Analysts say the archive traces the construction in 2003-2004 of a massive tunnel system called the Shahid Baroujerdi project. Satellite photography places the facility on a military base called Parchin, 30 miles southeast of Tehran, where regime officials have given UN monitors only the most limited access. Archive photos show the huge tunnel boring equipment used to build the complex, the lining of its tunnels with concrete. Renowned nuclear physicist David Albright says the site should have been declared and inspected as part of the nuclear deal, but never was.
Parchin is a very important site, and Iran has fought like crazy to try to keep the International Atomic Energy Agency out of there.
Albright inspected Saddam Hussein's nuclear sites in Iraq back in the 90s. His think tank, the Institute for Science and International Security, took the lead in publishing the first detailed analysis of the Baroujerdi project. A case could be made that indeed Iran is not presently complying with the terms of the nuclear deal, correct?
Correct.
And so when President Trump says that he disagrees with his intelligence chiefs about whether the Iranians are complying with the nuclear deal, in your view, as a learned scientist on this subject, there's actually some ground to agree with President Trump.
There is. When the head of the CIA says they're technically in compliance with the nuclear deal, I mean, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean in the details they're in compliance, but in the big picture, they're not? We think they may be working on nuclear weapons and making progress.
At the time that the Obama administration and the other Western powers finalized the Iran nuclear deal, did the United States know about the Berezerti project?
No.
Did the International Atomic Energy Agency know about the Berezerti project?
No.
Did the Israelis know about the Berezerti project?
No.
And to your knowledge, IAEA has taken no steps to go inspect this site?
None that I know of.
Ali Heinonen is the former Deputy Director General, the #2 official at the International Atomic Energy Agency. He has visited Parchin and is considered one of the world's foremost experts on nuclear weapons programs. Do you believe that Secretary Kerry and Secretary Moniz, the principal negotiators for the United States in the Iran nuclear deal, knew about this facility when they signed off on the final deal?
If they knew about it, they had to have a very good explanation why these installations were not exposed and dismantled.
Other world powers who finalized the nuclear agreement, Germany, France, Britain, China, Russia, and the European Union, have stayed in the deal, resisting U.S. pressure to abandon it. Opponents of President Trump's decision to withdraw from the nuclear deal argued it would alienate those allies who helped negotiate the accord and undercut the deal's major accomplishment. Among those critics, Democratic Congressman Peter Welch of Vermont.
It did address one. It required Iran to cease and desist from active development of nuclear weapons. That is a huge strategic achievement.
What difference does it make for the U.S. or any other country to stay in the deal or pull out of the deal?
Well, it boils down to business opportunities, Cheryl. The Europeans, the Chinese, and the Russians all can continue to do big business with the Iranian regime if they stay in the deal.
Do you think the discovery of the new site is going to make any difference?
That depends on what's done about it. Sources tell me that the Trump administration is pressuring the UN to demand access to this site, so far without any success. Analysts believe that this site does have some active military purpose, so when restrictions on Iran's nuclear program start to be lifted over the next decade, that could help them reach a nuclear bomb faster than we thought.
Very interesting. Great to have you here, by the way.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. Stay with us on Full Measure. A new poll shows where U.S. leadership is popular and where we're not. Starting in 2007, Gallup began looking at how 134 countries rate world leadership. The latest results show the U.S. registering low marks. Yet our leadership is most popular in a Muslim country. John Clifton of Gallup has some possible reasons. When you ask people how they feel about U.S. leadership, does that mean our leaders in particular, like Congress and the president, or does that mean the actions we take on the global stage?
They usually have the leader of the country in mind. So we've actually done testing in countries around the world, and we've said, how do you feel about Trump? Or in the past, we've asked, how do you feel about Obama? And they highly statistically correlate.
What are the trends?
The trends are not very good for the United States. So 2 years ago, 48% of people around the world said that they approved of the job performance of the leadership of the United States.
Would that have been President Obama?
That would have been President Obama. Over the past 2 years, though, they've virtually collapsed, and now 31% of people say that they approve of the job performance of the United States. And that puts us on par, if not slightly behind, China's leadership and slightly above Russia's leadership.
Is there any way to know what it is about our leadership in particular that they don't like, or is it just the mention of the president?
I think if you ask someone in the Trump administration what exactly is going on, is they would say this is a byproduct of America's First policy, which is we want to do what's right, not necessarily what's popular.
It's going to be only America first.
And so whether it's renegotiating trade agreements or breaking with climate change or the deal with Iran, they believe that that's something that's right and not necessarily popular.
Who is the most well-regarded leadership in the world, according to your polls?
The country with the highest approval ratings in the world comes in at about 38%, which is Germany. And Germany has had among the highest approval ratings over the past 2 years. But America had the highest approval ratings over about an 8-year period of time when Obama was in office.
And who's at the bottom?
The bottom is Russia. And Russia's just 1 point below the United States. 30% of people around the world say that they approve the leadership of Russia.
According to your polling, which countries like us the most?
Yeah, so the country where America receives its highest approval ratings is Kosovo. 80% of people in Kosovo say they approve of the job performance of the leadership of the United States. One of the reasons that that might be true is because the day in 2008, after Kosovo declared independence, America recognized that independence the day after. So that might be one of the reasons.
Where are we the least popular?
So a few countries where we're the least popular. One is Iran. So 2 years ago, just less than 20% of people said that they approved of the job performance of the United States. That collapsed down to 8% most recently. And you could probably mostly attribute that to us leaving the Iran deal.
Should we here in the U.S. care about what the rest of the world thinks about our leadership?
There's a lot of research that says we should care about what people around the world thinks about U.S. leadership. And this is a concept known as soft power, which has been popularized by Harvard academic Joseph Nye. And what that concept means is that if hard power is our economic and our military might, then soft power is this sort of power where people go along with you, not because they have to, but because they want to. Another thing that was found by a researcher at Berkeley recently using Gallup's World Poll data was he found that when leaders are unpopular, it also impacts trade. So over Obama's 8 years in his administration, trade dropped after Trump came into office. Now, that could be attributed to the trade wars, but he attributes it to our unpopularity.
Clifton points out that low popularity isn't necessarily a bad thing. He says doing what's right isn't always popular, and that President Trump's America First foreign policy is intended to benefit America, not make the country more popular. We're back with a look at what's ahead next week, right after this. Here's a look at what's coming up next week on Full Measure. We head to the epicenter of an oil boom that dwarfs anything America has ever seen before. It's in Texas. The head of the state agency overseeing many aspects of the surge is George P. Bush, nephew of President George W. Bush.
There's some estimates that put it by 2025 to be exporting upwards of 8 million barrels a day.
More than Iraq.
More than Iraq, which is extraordinary to think about.
The upside and downside to the incredible American oil rush. Scott Thuman reports from West Texas next week on Full Measure. Until then, thanks for watching. We'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.